Okay. Oh, that's my emoji from the previous class in Illustrator. Isn't he cute? Is he cute? He's cute. Oh. Okay, today we're going to talk about gradients. Oh, I guess I should save him. Okay, so I'm going to start with a new file. I'm not going to worry about the color right now. So again, let's talk about three types of gradients. Three types of gradients inside of Illustrator. The first one is old school. Old school gradient comes from, like I said, all the way back in 1988. If we wanted to make something look like a ball, here's how I would do it. I would take my ellipse tool and I would make a circle. Here's my circle. I might give it a color, no stroke. No stroke, because the stroke will also duplicate. So usually when I'm using this technique, I don't use no stroke. Give it a color fill. Whatever, what kind of ball we want. How about a purple ball? Purple ball. Then I would draw another circle again with no stroke, maybe in the upper corner here. And make that a brighter color. There we go. Okay, so what I want to do now is I have two objects. One is a circle, and they're both circles, and I want to blend from one to the other. So how I would do that is using something called the blending tool. The easiest way to do it is you want to select both objects, because the easiest way to do the blending is to blend from point to point, point to point. So the blending tool is located inside of Illustrator. Where did they put it? Oh, it's probably here. This one right here. It's probably, let's count down from the right side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 down on the right side of the toolbar. How it works is by clicking on a point from, so you go from one point, here's one point on the circle, to another point on the circle, and it gives you this kind of ball-looking blend. What is it doing? Well, it's putting individual circles in between. In fact, you could use the white direct selection tool. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it. You can use the white selection tool to select the top circle and move it. Well, you can even do this. Look. So this is how we had to do it in the past. If I go and select both of them, I can actually, use the black arrow, select both of them, the circles again, and double click on the blending tool. In the blending tool, you can actually designate how many steps you want in between. And I can designate specific steps. So how did I get to this option? Again, after I selected the dots, after I used the tool, it gave me a really smooth blend. See the really smooth blend? But, you know, this makes it look like a real gradient. I don't even want it to look like a real gradient. I want it to have a certain look to it. So instead of using, in the blending options, if you double click on the blending tool, in the blending options, I could designate, let's say, 12. And hit preview. Oh, there we go. That gives me a little bit look. Maybe even less than 12. Let's go down to 8. Hit tab on the keyboard. So now you can kind of get the idea of how it's working. What it's doing is it's putting circles in between. And you can see them. See if I can even spread them out like that. So if you want to make things like this, again, the blending tool can do that. Okay. This is how we used to have to make a realistic kind of ball-looking color inside of old school Illustrator. Okay? And it has a kind of style to it, right? You might have seen illustrations that look kind of like that. They're not all nice and smoothly blended. They have the little steps in between. Gives it a kind of feel to it. If you want, you can also go from shape to shape. The blending tool will morph from one shape to the other. So you go from circle to rectangle, and it'll do all the steps in between. It'll give you half a rectangle all the way down to a rectangle. I'll demonstrate that a little bit later in this class, but right now I'm talking blending here. So that's one blend. Let's do another one. So around 1990, I guess mid-90s, they came out with a true blend without having to do the steps. So if I make a circle now, I can then go and use what's called the blending tool. It's this one right here. The gradient tool, I'm sorry, the gradient tool, not blending, gradient tool. And to make a gradient, you have to hit the gradient, and the colors are all messed up. It's such a hard way of doing it. I don't have an easy solution to that. But you could click on, right below the color and toolbar over here is the gradient option. We've already seen this in the landscape. It's this one right here. It'll do black to white automatically. But after you do black to white, using the gradient tool, you can actually color it so it's not so so it's not so black to white. I don't know why it starts with black to white. I don't have a solution to that. But if you want to make it a realistic ball-looking thing, you can change the gradient to a radial gradient, right? There's a radial gradient. Then you can actually give your gradient some colors. These little boxes right here can be colors. You could give a nice light color. Light color. Do I have a light color?
It doesn't let you put your own color, does it?
Sure, using this one it should.
The only thing is once you start that, there's no eyedropper, so you have to move your RGB or C marking.
Yeah, it's not intuitive. I know I don't have an answer to that.
Oh, it's difficult. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, you just got to get used to it. So you have your colors in between. Then you can use the gradient or the blend tool right here, and you can use it to adjust your blend like that. So you can give it a real, and I haven't really talked about how to use the gradient tool too much. This one right here, it's a kind of a, you got to get used to it. This is it right here. It gives you a line where you could draw a line where you want the gradient to go. Okay, and in that line you could rotate it or do other things with it. If I was doing a sphere, I probably would have it like this, and then you can move the dot where you want. That looks like a pretty good gradient right there.
It basically shows where the light source would be.
Yeah. And you could squish this in like this if you want something like that. You could do slivers of color. Look, slivers of color. Ooh, look at that.
But to transform it to like kind of like oh no, the mesh. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of this.
Yeah, we're gonna do gradient mesh in a minute. So you can add extra colors inside there if you want. All right. We're gonna make things look metal by using this technique where we put two colors real close together like that. Real close together. So when we get to doing, we're gonna do metal. We're gonna do rocket ships again. I know we did a great rocket ship at the beginning, but next assignment we're gonna actually be doing a seal for the mission. NASA makes things that go into space, right? And so we're gonna make a NASA spaceship, and we're gonna be making things look metal. And one way to make things look metal is to make gradients that have really hard contrast between light and dark. If you want something to look like it's gold, you have a really bright color next to a black, gold, a bright yellow next to a black, using the gradient like that, and then it gives it this shiny kind of metal look. So we're going to demonstrate that next. So we're going to get back into this. We're not done with this. I know I haven't explained this all to you, the gradient tool, but I really want to get into the gradient mesh this week because it's a little easier actually than this, I think. So so this is 1988. This is 1995. Okay, now we're in 2015. Let's make another circle. Another circle. And then a solid color. You can't put a gradient mesh on a gradient. You can't put a gradient mesh on a gradient. It has to be on a solid color. If that makes any sense. I don't know how to explain it, but again, this is the solid color one, right? Solid color. So I have a circle here, and I'm going to kind of do it like I did on the board. I'm going to put a highlight up here and then a shadow down here using the gradient mesh tool, just so you can see how it works. How we do it is, the gradient mesh tool is this one right here, gradient mesh. So if you click on it, I'm going to come over to the screen and I'm going to click on a dot kind of where the highlight would be in my ball, kind of right about here. Boom. And remember, it shoots out these lines. Do you see how the lines it shot out? Remember the sound? Now you don't see no gradient. You're like, I don't see no gradient. Well, the gradient is you need to change the color of the dot. So if you come over to the color option, you can choose another color and you can see the color of the dot here. There we go, something like that. So I've chosen a color for my dot. Again, you could even come over here and double click on here and choose a color for your dot too. Either way. If I zoom in, we can see what it's done. Again, it put a point here, and the gradient now goes from this point to this point, this point to this point, this point to this point, this point to this point. And so you can change the color of this dot over here. I'm going to highlight clear. And in fact, don't use the gradient mesh tool to select the dots. I find the best way to select the dots is to use the white selection tool, the direct selection tool. If you use the gradient mesh tool and you miss clicking on the dot, you could make a new dot. And you're like, oh, I got another dot. I don't want another dot. I just wanted to select and change the color of the dot. This is much easier using the direct selection tool. So I can click on this dot over here, and then let's give it a different color. Different, maybe a darker red, and then maybe this one down here. I might make another darker over here, and then I might even make another gradient mesh. I'm going to click on another gradient mesh. Where's the gradient mesh tool here? What happened to it? I lost it. There it is. And maybe even put another gradient there. See how it's darker now down there? There we go. And you can move the dot. You can move the dot. There we go.
You make a point transparent.
Yes, you can use transparency on these. You can change the directional arm so that the gradient will flow through. For example, we're going to make a banana. I'm not making a banana today because my brain is not functioning right, but we will make a banana. And you can see the line right here. See the line right here? See how the line kind of flows and you can move it? So let's wait till next class. But next class we'll make a banana, and so we'll draw a shape. There, my banana shape. That's not very good. That's a banana shape. And if you have ever looked at a banana before, it usually has kind of a line that goes along with a dark green on one side and a little lighter on the other. And so we click in like here for the gradient mesh, and what it'll do is shoot a line that goes like this, like that, like that. And then we'll use this line as a great way of putting a definition between this top part and this bottom part. So you see this line right here is a very critical to how the gradient is being manipulated. Now I know we're just using red. Kind of looks like looks like a cherry. If you deselect, you can see how nice the gradient is. So again, here we go. 1995 to 1988, 1995. There we go. 1995, and now we got 2015. Imagine what it's going to be like in another 10 years from now trying to make a gradient, right? I'll be up here saying, here it is in 2020, or what are we doing? What's 10 years from now? 2025?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Already.
Can you imagine 10 years from now? Whoosh. I was born in the 60s. Can you imagine that? My parents were hippies, as you can tell by the way I act, probably. Like they smoked too much pot when I was born. My mother was so angry that they wouldn't let her smoke in the hospital when she was pregnant with me. She was so mad. They wouldn't let me smoke. Uh-oh, I recorded that. She's not going to listen. Okay, so you ready to try some fruit? You get a kind of understanding? Okay. I'll pause. Start with an apple. So I'm going to go to the internet. I'm going to get an apple. I'm going to import that picture of an apple into Illustrator. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the eyedropper to select the colors of the apple and save them. So you can use an eyedropper. There's a tool called an eyedropper that can suck up colors from a bitmap image. And then you can save them in a palette. And then as you're using your gradient mesh tool, you can use the colors that you stole from a photograph. Does that make sense? Try it. We're going to do. That's what we're going to do. So let's try it. Let's go steal an apple from the internet. I'm going to go to the internet. Google images. Apple. Oh, there they are. This one's probably a good one. So look at it. No, this looks too hard. It has too many water droplets. This one looks kind of nice. But again, if you're looking at it and you're doing gradient, look, there's little dots. There's a little texture in there, right? No, it's not a gradient. And it's not a perfect circle. So I use the pen tool usually. So this looks like a good one to try because I like the leaf too. You want to try and make a leaf, right? And the stem. So I don't know. You choose the one you want. You don't have to do an apple. You can do a grape. Hey, grapes are easier. Blueberries are pretty easy too. So I'm going to right click on this and say copy image. Right click and copy image. And then I'm going to go back to Illustrator and I'm going to say edit paste. And here's my apple. If you want to shrink it down to fit inside your artboard, you can put your cursor along the edge. Shrink it down a little bit. There it is. There you go. Fit in my artboard. So go get a piece of fruit, any kind of fruit. Let's do that another day. I can't do that right now. Yeah, we'll do that another day. But there's an option in the color if you've never seen it. It's Adobe Color. Color.adobe.com I think that's what it is, right? Color.adobe.com. This is a way you can make what's called color themes. We'll look at this in a minute, but one of the options in this program is you can create a color palette from an image. Create from image. It's right here. And so you could choose your green apple and it will then go and start selecting the colors from that. And then you could take these colors that you choose from your apple and import it into Illustrator. But let's do that a different day. But I just wanted to point out you might want to try it. Under a color.adobe.com, you can make a color palette from a photograph. But a different technique is you bring up the color palette inside of Illustrator. So I'm going to bring up the color palette. It's called Palette, P-A-P-P-P, palette. Where's palette? Palette? No. What am I looking for? Swatches, I'm sorry. Whoosh. Bring up the swatches inside of Illustrator. Windows swatches. Under the swatches option, what you could do is you could make a new folder, and right here is a new color group. So in the swatches window, you can make something called a new color group. It's right here. See a little folder, and it'll give you like a little folder in here. So I can click on there. I'm gonna make a new folder. And I can give it a name. I'm going to call it my Apple Colors. How about that? We call it Apple Colors. And I hit OK. Notice how it makes a little folder in the Swatches window. It makes a little folder in the Swatches window. So now what I can do is with my eyedropper tool, there's an eyedropper tool, it's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 down on the left side. I could use my eyedropper to select the color from the apple. From the apple color, I can then take it from here and drag it into my my folder. Again, in the Swatches window, as you use the eyedropper, you could click on a color, like I'm going to do a lighter green now. In the Swatches window, I can grab that color that's here and drag it into my folder, the group that I made. Boom. And so you just keep stacking them up so you have a whole group of colors from the apple. So I could choose another green, maybe a darker green. Drag that into my Swatches right here, so like a little folder. It's called Apple Colors. Maybe there's really dark color here for the top of the apple. Maybe a color from the leaf. Maybe a color from the stem. Maybe another bright green. I want a really bright green. You can move them around inside of your color group, so you have common ones next to each other. See how I move them around? Look at that. So I can make myself kind of a color group from using an eyedropper sucking up the color from the fruit or whatever you have. You can have a photo of a person and do the same thing. Right? You're trying to match color of a photograph of a person. Some people don't have this option in their swatches. You guys don't have the two little boxes up here? Let's see. Sort by options. What options? I don't know. The student back there doesn't have this up here. If you don't have this up here, you can still use the eyedropper and then drag from this swatch. You can drag from here to your folder here. So I don't know why this is not showing up on everybody's stuff, but I can drag from here to here, and it'll put it in the same spot, and then you can move them around in there. So again, try that real quick, and then we'll start drawing. Okay, in this case, the first thing I'm going to do, just like I did before, was lock the picture so I don't mess with it. Again, I'm going to use mostly the Layers window. Layers window. In the Layers window, I'm going to click next to the eyeball to lock it. Okay, it's locked. Then I'm going to start drawing on a layer above. In the Layers window, next to the trash can in the corner down here, is a new layer. And click on that, it makes a new layer. I might even call that apple, because I might make the leaf separate or something, I don't know. Apple. Again, what I'm going to do is just do the entire outline. Don't worry about the colors that are inside the object. I'm going to go all the way around the outside using the pen tool. So you were here last class. We did the numbers. You practiced your directional arms. You feeling comfortable with your pen tool. Here I go. I'm going to go all the way around the outside with my pen tool. So I'm going to start on the edge, click. I'm going to click and hold my pen tool down, get my directional arms going all the way along the edge of that. Look at that go. And of course it doesn't have to be perfect. There's my little directional arm going there. Try and put the least amount of points you can down. The less points, the better. And always go back to the beginning. There we go. Okay, so I made one big object all the way around for my fruit. So get yourself one big fruit object. done, like I said in the past, is I would move my apple over next to it and try and look at it to come up with where to put the gradient mesh down. Now this apple is a little complicated. It has a lot of highlights in it. When I usually start with the gradient mesh, I don't really think too much about the highlights. I usually use the highlights in. What I'm looking for when I start with the gradient mesh is to get an overall general color feel, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like you get this really highlight up here. This looks very complicated up here. This is going to be tough. Here's a little easier. I like to look for lines. You notice when we were using the gradient mesh, it puts lines down there. So I have a really strong line of color right here in the middle of my apple right here. Do you see it? Really strong line of color right here. And then I have a kind of another line of color kind of right here. And this is kind of darker green in here. And there's a little lighter green. And it's kind of dark along the edge here. And then it's bright on the edge here. So I might use those lines and think about where they are on my fruit, and I'm just going to go for it. How I go for it. And what you might want to do before you even start is duplicate your object. Because you're going to make a mistake and you're like, damn, I wish I could go back and start again. Then you can undo, and that's kind of hard. So what you might want to do, think you got a huge artboard. Look at all this space. All this space. Maybe just take this apple shape that you've made already, use your option, click and drag, and make a duplicate copy. Hey, you can make 3 or 4 of them. Hey, I can do a whole bunch of them. Practicing. Right? Okay, let's get back to there. So I can always go back to the original one if I need to. Again, here's my gradient mesh tool. I have one I'm going to kind of put towards the top right there, and then another one towards the edge right about here. Okay. So what you're looking for, again, is when you're putting dots down, if you're going to add more or less dots, the easiest way to do it is to put them along a line so that you have less dots. What did I just say? Okay, here, look at what I'm saying here. I already put a couple dots down. I'm starting to get, I haven't put any color in there yet. But if I want, let's say, along the edge over here to have another color, because if I look at the edge here, you'll see you have this kind of dark line that goes along the edge there, and then a kind of a white on the very edge for the highlight there. If I wanted something along the edge, I wouldn't click here, because if I click here, it's going to put that line there, but notice how it's going to put dot, 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 okay? And then it put another line that goes across here. That's adding a lot of lines. Instead of clicking kind of like in this area here, I might actually just click along the existing line that's already there. There's a line that's already here that goes from this dot to this dot. I might click right along that line, and instead of, it doesn't add a bunch of extra lines. Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm saying? By clicking along an existing line, you're not adding to the complexity of the object. Okay, let's start coloring. So again, there was a dark one there along the edge there, so I might give a dark. Where's my swatches? Where's my swatches? Swatches. What am I talking? Swatches. Here they are. So there was a dark one that goes along that line, and then there was a bright one that goes kind of along the edge there. Ooh, look at that. And then kind of zoom out and look about what we got there. Then there's kind of a dark kind of green in the middle there. I'm going to kind of give it one of those. There we go. And then these are kind of bright, really bright there. There's a highlight there. And this is a highlight right here. There's a really big, bright highlight right there. There we go. Nice bright highlight there. And then you can move your dots around there. I'm going to move them a little bit there. There we go. There we go. So again, selecting the dots to change the color. And then they have a bunch of highlights along the edge. Again, I clicked along the line there, and it's really bright along the. Oh, not that. I don't
Whenever
know.
I click along the line, it just adds another extra line.
It's just kind of a strategy. You kind of
Yeah, there's nothing. So if you look, not too bad start. But again, I've been doing this for 25 years, so I don't expect you to get it right the first time. Just practice.